This morning, the Coral Springs community is mourning the sudden loss of Vice Mayor Metayer Bowen. Police found her dead inside of her home, and now her husband is in custody.
There are no words that can truly capture the depth of this loss or the pain this organization and community are now dealing with.
Yeah, this really is just awful. Detectives say the 38-year-old's death was a result of a domestic incident. CBS News Miami, Steve Mejeri is your reporter, joining us live from Fort Lauderdale. He's at the jail where Stephen Bowen is being held this morning. And Steve, the vice mayor's family released a statement. What are they saying?
Well, they are remembering her as a leader and an advocate, and her family is asking for privacy at this time here. Now, the way police found out about this is that they had to do a welfare check at the home of Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen, and police found her dead inside of her home. And now, as we've said, her husband has now been charged with her killing here. And so this is the mug of the vice mayor's husband, Stephen Bowen. He has been charged with premeditated murder and tampering with fabricated evidence. He's been booked into the main Broward jail here in Fort Lauderdale. Now, Chopper 4 was above as police worked out of a command center on the Commissioner's Street. The chief of police did not describe Vice Mayor Metayer Bowen's injuries, but said there are no other suspects at this time. Employees at City Hall leaned on each other, just stunned by this turn of events. Metayer Bowen was the first Black and Haitian American woman elected to the City Commission. She was an environmental scientist by trade and was known for her environmental justice efforts.
You know, it just lost the only woman on our commission, man. You know, as much as we can try to fill that void, we can't.
And Metayer Bowen's sister posted this statement about the vice mayor. It reads in part, "Throughout her years in public office, she led with integrity, compassion, and an unwavering sense of purpose. She believed in bringing people together, listening to those she served, and working tirelessly to create positive change in her community. To us, she was a source of strength, wisdom, and love, someone who always put others before herself." Now, the city of Coral Springs has put up a web page where it will post updates on this case here. And one other thing worth noting is that Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz said that Metayer Bowen was just about to announce a run for Congress. Live in Fort Lauderdale, Steve Mejeri, CBS News Miami.
Into the death of Coral Springs Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen continued today with her husband officially arrested in her killing and facing a judge. Local 10's Terrell Forney is live in Fort Lauderdale with new details in this case. Terrell?
And Nicole, among those shocking allegations, police allege that this man killed his wife, the vice mayor, and slept in the same home in the overnight hours. He is now under arrest and being held here at the Broward County Jail without bond. Sky 10 up above as crime scene detectives were spotted still working the Coral Springs home where Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen was killed. And police say it was all at the hands of her own husband, Stephen Bowen.
Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir.
The 40-year-old appeared before a judge today on charges of premeditated murder and tampering with physical evidence. An arrest report says cops performing a welfare check at the home found Nancy's body wrapped in blankets and black garbage bags in the bed of the second-floor master bedroom.
Would anybody else from the public like to be heard?
The vice mayor was noticeably absent from Wednesday's city commission meeting, which raised alarm bells among her colleagues.
Initially, I just thought maybe there was just, issues trying to deal with work and whatnot. And so we led the meeting.
Stephen Bowen was eventually cornered by cops at an apartment complex in Plantation, where they found his F-150 pickup truck. In fact, police towed away several vehicles tied to the case. It's also where officers handcuffed and arrested Stephen. Investigators believe that Bowen also visited this home in Lauderdale Lakes after the shooting to drop off a rifle to an unsuspecting uncle and to allegedly make a startling admission. Bowen explained that he shot Nancy 3 times with a shotgun the previous night and then slept downstairs, and that Nancy was rolled up in a comforter with the garbage bag around her feet. When asked why, Stephen Bowen said that he couldn't take it anymore. Condolences have been pouring in from around the state for the trailblazing politician.
She's probably one of the most sincere public safety servants that I have met, not just over the last 7 years, but throughout my entire lifetime.
And that was Broward Sheriff Gregory Toney, who of course worked with the Coral Springs Police Department as a sergeant. This was in the years before Nancy Metayer Bowen was elected to her position on the commission. Nonetheless, we know that these condolences, they continue to pour in. There is a candlelight vigil that is planned for tomorrow night outside of the Coral Springs City Hall. One more note we should add, that even though police allege that Stephen Bowen made some admissions to a family member about what he did not do the same thing with detectives. In fact, he declined to speak with detectives, according to these officers, and he opted for a lawyer. So again, this investigation is still ongoing. We are live in Fort Lauderdale tonight. Terrell Fournay, Local 10 News.
Hundreds of people got together tonight at Coral Springs City Hall to honor Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen. The 38-year-old was found dead in her home after police say her husband shot and killed her. Tonight, we're also hearing the 911 call made by the husband's uncle. CBS News Miami's Abby Dodge is your reporter live in Coral Springs. Abby, what was the message her friends wanted to share?
Lauren, there was a common call to action tonight. City leaders and friends are asking anyone who knew her to live like Nancy. Through grief and tears, friends of Nancy Metayer Bowen shined a light on her legacy. They say it's one of compassion, exemplified by the number of people who showed up tonight.
It means a lot. It means to show you who Nancy was to so many of us.
The Metayer family had a front row seat to the outpouring of love, which came with a flood of emotion.
Grieve how you gotta grieve.
Her family has been dealing with this pain for days. Police say Metayer Bowen's husband, Stephen Bowen, shot and killed her Tuesday night. Bowen was arrested Wednesday. His uncle made a chilling call to 911.
Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her husband?
Is he alive? He said no.
Her husband?
Yes.
But those who gathered tonight want to remember her life, not her death. Metayer Bowen was not only a leader, but a mentor.
Nancy showed me what it truly means to advocate, not to speak but to stand, and not to care but to also act.
For those already in office, they reflected on what could have been, presenting her family with a flag flown at the Capitol.
Nancy was always for the people. She never postured. This was never about her. It was about her community.
As the first Black and Haitian American woman on the city commission, her presence and now absence is felt countywide.
I would like to tell you thank you for your daughter.
As the memories flashed by, her
It started like any other morning in Coral Springs. Quiet and predictable. The kind of day that gives no warning of the storm ahead. Nancy Metayer Bowen had built a reputation as someone dependable. Someone who showed up, not just for meetings, but for people. So when she didn't appear for a scheduled obligation, it didn't immediately trigger panic. Just a small ripple of concern. A missed call, then another. Messages left unanswered. At first, it was easy to assume she was busy, maybe caught up in something unexpected. But as the hours passed, that assumption began to feel less convincing. Those who knew her best understood that this wasn't normal. She wasn't someone who disappeared without explanation. Concern slowly turned into urgency. Calls were made, texts sent, each attempt met with silence. The unease grew heavier, settling in the minds of colleagues and loved ones alike. Eventually, the decision was made to request a welfare check, a step that would change everything. When authorities arrived at her home, there was no immediate sign of what they were about to uncover. From the outside, everything looked as it should, calm and undisturbed. But inside, the reality was far different, a discovery that would soon send shockwaves through the entire community. As investigators began their work, the atmosphere around the home shifted from concern to something far more serious. What had once been a place of routine and privacy was now the center of a growing investigation. Every detail mattered, every corner of the house carefully examined as authorities worked to understand what had taken place in those final hours. It didn't take long for them to realize this was not a random gatana, not something that happened by chance. The signs pointed inward, towards someone within the home, someone who had been part of Nancy's everyday life. The focus slowly narrowed, and attention turned toward her husband. To the outside world, their life appeared stable, even ordinary. But investigators are trained to look beyond appearances. As they began piecing together timelines and statements, inconsistencies started to emerge. Small details that didn't quite align, gaps that raised more questions than answers. It became clear that the truth was not going to be simple, and certainly not easy to accept. For those following the case, the shift in direction was both shocking and unsettling. The idea that something so tragic could originate from within a close relationship challenged everything people thought they understood. Friends and community members struggled to reconcile the person they knew with the situation unfolding before them. It's often said that the most difficult truths are the ones closest to home, and in this case, that reality was becoming impossible to ignore. As more information began to surface, the case grew heavier, more complex. And if you're following along trying to make sense of it all, don't forget to share this video and subscribe, because every update brings us closer to understanding the full picture. What investigators were uncovering behind those closed doors suggested a story that had been building long before that day, a story that was only just beginning to come to light. The investigation reached a turning point when new information surfaced, shifting the case from uncertainty to something far more defined. What had once been a collection of questions began to form a clearer, though deeply troubling picture. Authorities received a report that would quickly become central to everything. A statement from a relative claiming that a confession had been made. It was the kind of detail that changes the direction of an entire investigation, and law enforcement wasted no time acting on it. Detectives moved carefully, verifying the claim, comparing it against the evidence already collected. Piece by piece, the timeline started to tighten. What happened inside that home was no longer just speculation. It was becoming a narrative supported by both physical findings and statements. The weight of that realization began to settle in, not just for investigators, but for everyone following the case. This was no longer a mystery about what might have happened, but a search for why it happened. As officials continued their work, they also began looking into the past. Records were reviewed, including previous calls linked to the residents. While not every detail was made public, it became clear that this moment may not have existed in isolation. Sometimes, the most important clues are not found in a single event, but in patterns that develop over time. And in this case, investigators were determined to understand every layer, every possible warning sign that may have been overlooked. For the community, each update brought a mix of clarity and heartbreak. The more that was revealed, the harder it became to process. If you're following this story closely, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next, because every detail matters. As the case continued to unfold, one thing became certain: the truth was no longer hidden, and the path toward accountability was beginning to take shape. As the case moved forward, the weight of everything that had been uncovered began to settle into a new phase, one defined by the legal process. Charges were formally filed, marking a shift from investigation to accountability. What had once been questions and speculation was now being shaped into a case that would be presented in court. For many, this moment brought a sense of reality that was impossible to ignore. This was no longer just a tragic story in the news. It was a legal battle that would determine responsibility and consequences. Outside the courtroom, the community was dealing with its own process of grief. Vigils were held, candles lit, and voices raised in remembrance of Nancy Metayer Bowen. People shared stories of her leadership, her kindness, and the impact she had on those around her. She wasn't just a public official. She was someone who had touched lives in meaningful ways. That made the loss feel even heavier, and the search for answers even more important. At the same time, the case sparked deeper conversations. Many began reflecting on the hidden struggles that can exist behind closed doors, the signs that might go unnoticed, and the importance of speaking up. It wasn't just about what happened, but about what could be learned from it. These discussions extended beyond Coral Springs, reaching people who saw parts of their own experiences reflected in the story. And if this moment in the story is hitting you in a real way, don't forget to like and share this video, because awareness can make a difference in ways we don't always see. As the legal process continued, attention turned toward what would happen next, how the evidence would be presented, how the truth would be argued, and ultimately, how justice would be pursued. The next chapter would not just be about the past, but about what comes after it. In the days and weeks that followed, the story stopped being just breaking news and started becoming something heavier, something permanent in the memory of the community. There was no simple ending, no clean explanation that could erase the weight of what had happened. Instead, there was a slow unfolding of procedures, hearings, and ongoing investigations, all working toward a resolution that still felt far away. The questions that remained were not just about how it happened, but why it reached this point without intervention. For those who knew Nancy Metayer Bowen personally or through her work, the loss was not just political, it was deeply human. She was remembered not only for her role as a vice mayor, but for the way she carried herself in service to others. In conversations across Coral Springs, her name continued to come up in moments of reflection, gratitude, and disbelief. People spoke about her energy, her commitment, and the future she was building, a future that was cut short far too soon. As the legal process continued to move forward, the public waited for clarity. But clarity does not always arrive quickly in cases this complex. Evidence, testimony, and procedure take time, and in that time, emotions often run ahead of facts. Still, there was a shared hope that truth and accountability would eventually align, bringing some measure of understanding to an otherwise painful situation. And as we reach the end of this chapter, take a moment to reflect on what this story reveals about life, leadership, and the hidden struggles people may carry. If you've followed this journey from the beginning, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because stories like this are not just about what was lost, but about remembering why it matters. In the end, what remains is memory, impact, and the unanswered questions that continue to linger long after the headlines fade.